Pause for a second. Have you ever noticed that the more you worry about something, the more it seems to show up in your life? Or maybe you've experienced those moments where just focusing on a goal makes opportunities suddenly appear out of nowhere. Here's the wild part. This isn't magic, and it's not just coincidence. It's a real phenomenon, something even science is finally starting to acknowledge. It's called the observer effect. But don't worry, I'm not here to drown you in quantum physics or complicated jargon. Today, we're cutting straight to what matters. How can you use the observer effect to actually change what you experience, starting right now? I'm talking about real-world results. Improving your focus, shifting your mindset, and even transforming outcomes in your work, your relationships, your life. We're diving into why your attention is the most powerful tool you have, and how you can train it to work for you instead of against you. Forget everything you thought you knew about being a passive observer in your own story. In the next few minutes, I'm giving you simple questions and practical steps. No fluff, no theory, so you can start shaping your own entangled world today. Ready to change the way you see reality? Let's get started. Let's start with something everyone's felt at least once. You're sitting somewhere, maybe at a cafe or walking down the street, and suddenly, there's a tingle at the back of your neck. You turn around, and sure enough, someone is looking right at you. Why does that happen? Is it just our mind playing tricks? Or is there something more to being observed? Now hold that thought, because today we're going way beyond the feeling of being watched. We're about to explore a strange but fascinating idea. The very act of noticing something can change what it actually is. This isn't just another story about human psychology or intuition. We're going to talk about a real, proven effect from the world of physics, one that shakes the very foundation of what we believe about reality. But before you tune out thinking, physics isn't my thing, trust me, this is a story about you, about your world, about how you might have more power in shaping your reality than you ever realized. Imagine for a second that reality isn't a movie you sit back and watch, but something more like a video game, where what happens depends on what you do next. Sounds wild, right? But it turns out, the universe may have more in common with a choose-your-own-adventure story than a documentary. Let's dig into why. Picture a scientist in a lab, running a classic experiment. She sets up two small slits in a barrier. Behind the barrier is a screen that can show where things land. Now she starts firing tiny particles, let's say electrons, at the barrier. What would you expect? Maybe two neat lines appear on the screen, matching the slits. But here's where things start to get weird. If the scientist doesn't watch which slit each electron goes through, the electrons act like waves. They don't just pass through one slit or the other. Instead, they act as if they go through both slits at once. The pattern they make on the screen looks like the interference you see when you throw two stones in a pond, waves crisscrossing and creating a complex pattern. But here's the real kicker. As soon as the scientist decides to watch which slit each electron goes through, everything changes. The interference pattern disappears. Suddenly, each electron acts like a solid, tiny ball only going through one slit or the other. It's as if the electron knows it's being watched and changes its behavior to fit our expectations. This isn't just a science trick. It's called the double-slit experiment, and it's one of the most mind-boggling discoveries in all of science. Now, you might be thinking, cool, but I'm not a particle. I'm a person, living my daily life. What's this got to do with me? Great question. Here's where things get personal. What this experiment shows is that observation isn't just about seeing. It's about interacting. When you pay attention to something, even if you're just measuring it or asking a question, you're part of the story. You're not on the sidelines. The world responds to you. Think about your own life for a second. How often do you walk through your day on autopilot? Most of us do. We get up, check our phone, eat breakfast, go to work or school, run through 1,000 little routines. How much of it do you actually notice? Now let's flip that. Think about the moments you really pay attention. Maybe it's a first date, or the first time you hear your favorite song live in concert, or even something small, like noticing how the light looks at sunset after a long day. In those moments, doesn't everything seem more real, more alive? Colors are brighter, sounds are clearer, time slows down. That's the invisible hand of observation. When you really notice, the world reacts. Not just inside your head, but possibly at a much deeper level than anyone realized until recently. Here's what most people get wrong about quantum mechanics and the observer effect. It's not that you're creating reality out of nothing. It's that, at the most fundamental level, things aren't set in stone until something or someone pays attention. Before you look, particles are in a kind of maybe state. They could be here or there or even somewhere in between. It's only when you measure, when you observe, that these possibilities collapse into one solid outcome. It's like flipping a coin but never looking at the result. As long as you don't peek, it's both heads and tails at the same time. But the moment you look, the story's decided. Let that sink in for a second. Reality, at its smallest level, waits for you. Let's bring this back to Earth, because this isn't just about electrons. It's about how you move through your own life. Have you ever noticed that when you focus on a problem, solutions start to appear? Or when you worry about something, it feels like it grows bigger in your life? That's not a coincidence. What you pay attention to, you feed. You amplify it, you make it real. There's a reason why top athletes, performers, and leaders practice visualization, mindfulness, and intentional focus. It's not just a motivational trick. They understand that where your mind goes, energy flows. Your reality starts to shift. Subtle at first, but sometimes in surprising ways. Let's make it concrete with a story. Imagine a young musician, call her Mia. For years, Mia plays guitar alone in her room. She loves it, but she never tells anyone. One day, she decides to join an open mic night. She focuses her attention on preparing. She visualizes herself on stage, imagines the applause, the nerves, the feeling of finishing her song. She tells a friend, "I'm doing this. I'm going to play in front of people for the first time." Her world shifts. Suddenly, she notices a flyer for another local music night. A neighbor mentions a band looking for a guitarist. The more she focuses, the more opportunities appear. Ones that were always there, but she never noticed. Is this just luck? Or is Mia's observation, her attention and intention, actually reshaping her world? Science can't answer that fully yet. But every day, people experience this invisible hand guiding their lives, and it always seems to start with paying attention. The double-slit experiment shook the foundations of physics. It told us that the universe isn't just out there, running on autopilot. It's interactive. It waits for input, and, like a video game responding to your choices, reality responds to your awareness. Let's zoom out. What happens when you start to really look at your own life? Not just watching it pass by, but asking questions, setting intentions, getting curious about what's possible. Suddenly, you notice things you never saw before. You start to see patterns, connections, even small signs pointing you in a new direction. It's almost like the universe is playing along with you, waiting for you to take your next move. Here's another thing to think about. When you focus on something, you're not just changing your own experience. Your energy, your mood, your outlook start to ripple out to the people around you. Maybe you've walked into a room and instantly sensed the mood. Tense, joyful, excited. That's not just your imagination. Our minds, our attention, even our emotions are contagious. Science calls it emotional contagion. When you're calm and confident, others around you feel it too. When you're anxious, stress spreads. But what if it goes even deeper? What if, at some level we can't fully see, your attention changes more than just your mood? Maybe even the events, the outcomes, the possibilities themselves. Let's be clear. This doesn't mean you can just think happy thoughts, and everything will magically go your way. The observer effect isn't a shortcut or a cheat code, but it does mean that you're not a spectator in your own story. Every day, with every act of attention, you're part of what unfolds. You choose what to focus on. You choose what questions to ask. You choose which possibilities get to become real. So, the next time you feel stuck or lost or powerless, remember the invisible hand. You don't have to change everything at once. Just pick one thing and pay real attention to it. Notice it. Ask questions. See what happens. It's easy to believe the world is fixed, that things just happen. But every great discovery, every innovation, Every story of transformation starts the same way. Someone notices something others ignored. Maybe it's a small detail, a nagging feeling, a sense that things could be different. Maybe it's a question that won't go away. Whatever it is, attention is the first spark. And that spark can set off a chain reaction. In the double-slit experiment, that spark of attention changed how particles behaved. In your life, that same spark can set off a series of changes, big or small. Let's pause here and ask, what in your life have you been ignoring? Is it a goal you've put off? A relationship you've neglected? A dream that seemed too crazy to chase? What if all it takes to shift things is your attention? Not just casual glancing, but real, focused observation. It's easy to get swept up in routine, to let days blur together. But imagine, just for a moment, that the world is waiting for you to look. And that, when you do, new doors could start to open. This is just the start of a bigger journey. You're not just living in a world that happens to you. You're in a world that responds to you. So, as you move through the rest of your day, ask yourself, where am I putting my attention? What am I choosing to see? Because the invisible hand of observation is always there, ready to shape what comes next. We've seen that observation isn't passive. It changes what's possible. It's the difference between a world that's fixed and a world that's alive with potential. But here's the question that's waiting for you in the next chapter. If simply observing can shift reality at the tiniest level, what happens when you start to pay attention not just to particles but to your own life, your choices, your future? Stay with me because we're about to push this idea even further, into the place where consciousness and reality meet, and where you might just discover the power you've had all along. So you've just seen how the simple act of observing can change the path a particle takes. If something as tiny as an electron responds to being watched, it's hard not to wonder, what about us? Are we just passive spectators, quietly sitting in the audience while life plays out on stage? Or is it possible that every single day, we're shaping what happens just by noticing, focusing, and caring about certain things more than others? Think about those moments when you can't help but watch your life closely. Maybe you're waiting for test results, or keeping your eye on a loved one at a busy airport. There's an intensity in those moments that seems to charge the air, as if your attention has a kind of gravity. But could it really be true that the very act of watching, of being aware, is shaping what unfolds? Let's play with a crazy idea for a second. What if you're not just a receiver, not just a brain soaking up whatever the world throws at you? What if your mind is like a spotlight, and wherever you shine it, things start to grow, to take shape, to become more real? It's easy to think of attention as something soft, something intangible, but the observer effect suggests otherwise. There's a spark of power in what you choose to notice. Of course, it's not as simple as waving a magic wand. You can't just want something and have it appear. But have you ever noticed how your intentions set the tone for everything that follows? You walk into a room expecting conflict, and suddenly the tension rises. You decide to be open to new experiences, and suddenly the world feels full of possibility. It's as if your attention is the steering wheel, and your beliefs and intentions are the hands that guide it. Science still doesn't have all the answers about consciousness, attention, and their relationship to reality. But there are hints, strange and tantalizing, that your awareness might be doing much more than just observing. The boundary between the outside world and your inner world gets blurry the closer you look. Some physicists and philosophers have even suggested that the universe itself might not fully exist in any fixed way until someone, somewhere, becomes aware of it. This is not just an abstract idea for the lab or the lecture hall. It's something you can sense, even if you've never heard of quantum physics. Remember a time when you felt invisible, when it seemed like nobody noticed you? Everything feels foggy, like you're floating through the day. Then there are times when someone looks at you, really looks, and suddenly you feel seen, your mood shifts, your energy changes, you come alive. If being observed changes how we feel, what if our observing changes what's possible? Try this out for yourself. Pick one part of your day to really notice. Maybe it's your morning coffee, the way the sunlight hits your window, or the words you say to someone close to you. Don't just let it pass by on autopilot. Bring your full attention to it and see if it feels different. More vivid, more present, more meaningful. That's your consciousness at work, shaping your experience in real time. It's tempting to shrug this off as just psychology. But there's a deeper question here. If your mind can shape your perception, could it also shape the world you're perceiving? And if you start to believe that your attention and intention are powerful, would you begin to use them differently? What if your beliefs, instead of being a mirror, were actually the blueprint for your reality? Here's the fascinating part. Throughout history, people have found that what they focus on grows. This isn't just about achieving goals, but about something fundamental, how your inner world and the outer world seem to interact. You might not be able to control everything, but you are constantly influencing what unfolds around you, whether you realize it or not. So the next time you catch yourself drifting or feeling powerless in the face of life's chaos, remember that your consciousness is never just a bystander. You're not watching the story from the cheap seats. In ways that are still being uncovered, you are part of the creation process. Moment by moment, thought by thought, choice by choice. If observing even the smallest particle can shift its behavior, what happens when entire lives, entire worlds, are shaped by the way we look at them? What if your attention is the most valuable resource you have, not just for getting things done, but for shaping what's real for you? Hold that question, because in the next chapter, we're going to push things even further. If your observation shapes your own world, what happens when our realities get tangled up with each other? What if you're not just influencing your own life, but are part of a web of connections, a universe of observers, all shaping reality together? The answers might be stranger and more powerful than you ever imagined. And what about when you feel powerless or small, just one person in a world of billions? Remember that even a single observer can tip the balance. History is full of examples. Scientists, artists, leaders whose focus and intention shifted entire eras. But you don't have to be famous to have impact. Every choice, every moment of mindful attention sends out ripples. Sometimes the smallest stone makes the biggest waves. Let's bring it back to the quantum world for a second. When two particles become entangled, they lose their separateness. Measuring one instantly affects the other. In the same way, when you truly connect with someone, through empathy, understanding, or shared purpose, you break down the walls between me and you. You become, in a sense, entangled. The world becomes a little less separate, a little more unified. This also means the stories you tell yourself matter. If you believe you're alone, struggling against a cold and distant universe, that's the reality you help to reinforce. But if you open yourself to the possibility of connection, of entanglement, new realities start to appear. You notice opportunities to help, to support, to uplift, and those opportunities multiply. It's not about ignoring your own needs or pretending everything is perfect. It's about recognizing your place in the bigger picture. When you act with awareness, when you focus your attention with intention, you become a node of influence in the great network of reality. There's a challenge here, too. Entanglement means your actions have consequences, not just for you, but for others. If you spread kindness, hope, and curiosity, you lift the whole web. If you feed fear, division, or negativity, you amplify those ripples as well. The choice isn't always easy, but it's always yours. You might be asking, how do I start using this in my own life? Begin by noticing your connections. Notice how your mood affects those around you. Notice how collective focus changes the energy in a room, a family, a team. Pay attention to what you share, what you celebrate, what you give your energy to. Small choices matter. When you join your intention with others, the effects can be exponential. So, next time you find yourself thinking you're just one person, remember, you are part of an entangled world. Your reality, your choices, your focus are woven together with the lives of others. There is power in connection, in collective attention, and in the stories we create together. Here's the most exciting part. If we are truly entangled, then we're not just shaping our own stories. We're co-creating reality itself, every day, in every moment, together. The invisible threads that link us aren't just a metaphor. They're the fabric of existence, but there's still more to discover. If entanglement gives us a window into our collective power, what happens when you decide to use it on purpose? Can you actually shape tomorrow by choosing where you place your focus today? What practical steps can you take to harness the observer effect and entanglement, not just as ideas, but as tools to transform your life and your world? That's what we're about to explore next. Because knowing you're part of an entangled reality is just the beginning. The real question is, what will you do with that knowledge? Imagine waking up one morning and feeling a strange sense of connection. A kind of invisible thread linking you to the people and places around you, even those far away. You can't see it, but you sense that your choices and your attention aren't happening in a vacuum. The world feels less like a set of separate pieces, and more like a living web, where everything is connected in subtle, surprising ways. If this sounds a little mystical, here's the twist. It's not just an idea from ancient philosophy or spiritual teachings. It's something science has stumbled upon at the smallest scale imaginable. In the quantum world, there's a phenomenon so strange, so at odds with everyday experience, that even Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. It's called entanglement. Here's how it works. Imagine two tiny particles that interact. Maybe they collide or come from the same source. After this interaction, they go their separate ways. One might end up in a lab in New York, the other in Tokyo. But here's where it gets weird. No matter how far apart these particles are, when something happens to one, the other seems to know instantly. Change one, and the other responds even if they're light years apart. It's as if they're still connected by an invisible cord, communicating faster than any signal could travel. For a long time, scientists tried to explain this away, looking for some hidden trick or loophole. But experiment after experiment keeps confirming it. Entanglement is real. The universe at its core is wired for connection, not isolation. Now, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with you, living your regular human life far above the quantum realm? Here's where things get fascinating, and a little unsettling. Because if reality at its smallest scale is fundamentally entangled, why would things be completely separate at larger scales? Maybe this interconnectedness doesn't just belong to the world of particles, but spills over into the world we live in every day. Think about your own life. How often have you thought of someone, only for them to call you out of the blue? Or had a feeling about a place or an event, and later found out you were right, even when there was no way to know? These moments are easy to dismiss as coincidence, but what if there's more to the story? What if, like entangled particles, we're connected in ways science is only beginning to explore? Let's take it a step further. We spend so much of our lives believing we are separate. My thoughts are mine, your thoughts are yours, and the world is just the stage we act on. But what if our realities are entangled? What if your choices, your attention, and your awareness are always weaving in and out of the lives around you, like ripples in a pond? Picture it. Every conversation, every interaction, every shared experience is a point of contact, a place where realities touch and become connected. Maybe that's why the mood of a room can change when just one person walks in. Maybe that's why collective movements, when groups of people focus on the same goal, can create changes that seem impossible for any one individual. There's a reason why revolutions, creative breakthroughs, and even healing can spread like wildfire when people unite their minds and intentions. In a deeply connected world, our thoughts and choices don't just bounce back to us. They echo and amplify, sometimes in ways we never expected. Let's ground this with a story. Imagine two close friends, Alex and Jordan. They've grown up together, shared countless memories, and even when life pulls them to different cities, they feel a kind of synchronicity. On the day Alex has a job interview, Jordan, miles away, suddenly feels anxious for no reason. Later, when Alex calls with the news, "I got the job," Jordan laughs and says, "I knew something was up. I could just feel it." It's easy to brush this off as friendship or intuition, but stories like this happen everywhere, all the time, between friends, siblings, even strangers who share a powerful experience. Science has begun to study these connections, too. There are experiments where people in separate rooms are shown flashes of light, and their brainwaves sync up, even when they can't see or hear each other. There are studies on twins who can sometimes sense when the other is in trouble, even across continents. None of this proves that we're entangled, but it points to a deeper truth. The boundary between your world and mine is much thinner than it seems. Now, if we're truly connected at some deep level, what does that mean for the way we live? If my choices ripple out to affect others, and there's ripple back to me, it changes the whole game. Suddenly, attention isn't just personal, it's collective. Reality isn't just my own private movie. It's a shared canvas, one we're all painting on together. This idea can feel both thrilling and intimidating. On one hand, it means we're never really alone. Our struggles, our hopes, our dreams, they're part of something bigger, a vast network of lives and possibilities. On the other hand, it means we can't just shrug off responsibility for the world around us. If my thoughts, my focus, my beliefs can influence the larger reality, then every day I'm helping to shape the world we all share. Take a moment and let that sink in. Think about the times you've seen collective focus at work. Fans cheering at a sports event, people coming together in a crisis, communities rallying around a cause. The energy is electric, almost physical. Something changes in the air. Is it just excitement, or are we tapping into something deeper? A real, measurable power that comes from being entangled, from sharing intention? There are stories of entire groups meditating for peace in war-torn regions. And during those moments, conflict drops, violence slows, and a sense of calm seems to settle in. Are these just coincidences? Or is there an invisible web linking all of us, waiting to be tuned with shared attention? Of course, none of this means you can control everything. Life is still unpredictable, full of surprises, setbacks, and mystery. But understanding that your reality is connected to others opens up new possibilities. It means you have influence, not just over your own experience, but over the bigger story, the collective world. If you want proof of this in everyday life, look at the power of trends and ideas. How quickly can a new idea spread from one person to millions, transforming culture, technology, or even politics? How does a single video go viral, changing conversations across the planet overnight? It's because we're wired for connection. We are entangled in networks of attention and intention, constantly shaping and reshaping the world together. But this also raises tough questions. How much influence do we actually have within this web? Are some people more powerful observers than others? Does it matter if we focus on the same things, or do our individual realities blend and balance out? If one person is hopeful and another is fearful, what reality wins? The truth is, nobody knows for sure. What we do know is that where we place our collective attention, energy follows. So, how do you use this knowledge? The first step is awareness, recognizing that you're not just living for yourself. The way you focus, the stories you tell, the intentions you set, all ripple out. Imagine a world where more people realize this and start acting like their attention matters. The world would look very different if everyone understood their role in the web. What if the world is waiting for you to notice it? And even more, what if the world changes more when many people notice together? Now that you know about entanglement, that our realities are secretly woven together, it's hard to look at life the same way. Suddenly, those small moments of connection, those bursts of collective excitement or sadness or hope, feel much bigger than you once imagined. It's not just about single lives, single choices, single acts of attention. It's about the way all those choices and acts stack up, overlap, and echo until reality itself starts to shift. Think about any time you've been swept up by a crowd. Maybe it's the way a stadium buzzes before a crucial goal, or the almost electric calm that falls over a theater just before the curtain rises. There's a reason people love to gather for concerts, sports, rallies, or even candlelight vigils. When we share focus, it feels as though something new is created, something you can't get alone in your room. There's a kind of magic, and maybe it's more than a feeling. Consider the ripple effect of collective focus. The more people put their attention on the same thing, the more reality seems to bend in that direction. Think of how a single cause, like a charity or a movement, can start as a whisper and grow into a tidal wave. Someone shares a video, a story, a message. Others pick up the signal, adding their own energy and intention. Before long, it's not just an idea, it's an event, a movement, a reality that thousands or millions are living inside together. If a single observer can influence what unfolds, what happens when hundreds, thousands, or millions all tune in at once? There are stories, hard to prove, but impossible to ignore, of communities meditating together for peace, and suddenly violence in their city drops. Or groups of people sending positive intentions to someone who's sick, and healing accelerates. Are these just lucky breaks? Or are we glimpsing the power of the collective observer effect? Maybe both. Even if the science is still catching up, the pattern repeats. The world feels different when we pay attention together. Look closer and you'll notice this in the smallest things. When you smile at someone, it's contagious. Suddenly, the whole room feels lighter. When a few people start to panic, fear spreads like wildfire. Social scientists talk about emotional contagion, and it's real, but what if it's only one layer of a deeper process? One where our shared attention shapes the energy, mood, and maybe even the outcomes themselves. We see this play out in culture all the time. Think about viral trends. Why does one video or meme explode when thousands of others fade into the digital abyss? It's not always because it's the best or funniest or most useful. Sometimes it just catches a collective wave of attention. One person shares it, then 10, then 100, then everyone you know. It's as if the world, for a brief moment, decides to pay attention together, and that attention makes the trend real. It becomes part of the story we all tell ourselves about what matters. This isn't just about pop culture or news cycles. The same effect happens in more profound, even mysterious ways. There are moments in history, mass movements for freedom or justice, breakthroughs in science, sudden shifts in how society sees itself, where it feels like humanity wakes up together. These aren't accidents. They're what happens when enough people decide to observe, to care, to participate. Maybe that's the true meaning of collective observation. Reality responds to what we care about, together. It's as if the universe itself listens, and when enough of us pay attention, things start to change. Sometimes slowly, sometimes in an instant. But there's a responsibility here, too. If we can shape reality by focusing together, what are we choosing to amplify? Are we drawn to outrage, conflict, and fear, and does our focus make those things bigger? Or do we turn our attention to hope, connection, and possibility, helping those things take root and spread? The news cycle, for example, thrives on collective attention, sometimes for good, often for drama or disaster. Every time we click, share, or dwell on a story, we give it more power in the web of shared reality. There's an old saying, where attention goes, energy flows. But with millions of minds pointing in the same direction, that energy can be massive. It's the difference between a trickle and a flood. This is why advertisers fight for your focus, why politicians try to capture the public's imagination, why artists and creators hope their work resonates. The real currency is collective attention, because that's what makes something real in the world we share. So how do you use this in your own life? Start with awareness. Notice what grabs your attention and what you give back. When you join your energy with others, whether in celebration, protest, prayer, or simply shared presence, you become part of something bigger. You help decide what gets amplified in the world and what fades away. This is where the power of intention comes in. It's one thing to drift with the crowd, letting your focus be swept up by whatever is loudest or most urgent. It's another to choose with purpose, where you invest your observation. If you set a goal, if you visualize a change, if you link your intention with others, family, friends, coworkers, strangers with the same dream, you're not just hoping for the best. You're joining a powerful current of collective creation. Let's try a thought experiment. Imagine a group of people all trying to solve a problem. Maybe curing a disease, cleaning up a neighborhood, or inventing something new. Alone, each person's effort matters. But together, their focus multiplies. They share ideas, motivate each other, notice things one person would miss. The group's shared observation becomes a kind of engine, driving results faster and further than any one person could. Now zoom out. What if whole communities, cities, or even countries joined their focus? What if the world's attention turned to climate, to peace, to possibility, and didn't let go? History tells us it's possible. Collective observation has toppled empires, ended wars, created new worlds. It's not easy, and it's never guaranteed, but the potential is always there, waiting for enough people to care. You might wonder, does this mean your individual focus doesn't matter? Absolutely not. In fact, the collective effect begins with each person choosing to pay attention, to care, to get involved. Every movement starts with a few people who see something no one else does and decide to shine a light. Their observation is the first spark. Then others notice and the fire spreads. Sometimes it works the other way too. When enough people ignore a problem or turn away from injustice, it grows in the shadows. Reality is shaped as much by what we refuse to see as by what we celebrate. That's why it matters to pay attention not just to the good, but to what needs changing. Awareness is the beginning of every transformation. So, think about your own circles, your family, your friends, your team at work or school. Where is your shared attention flowing? What stories are you telling together? Are you building something or just reacting? Are you amplifying hope or worry? Every day is a chance to choose, to direct your collective focus in a way that creates something new. It's easy to underestimate the power of a single moment of shared observation. But those moments add up. A teacher inspiring a class, a coach rallying a team, a community gathering after a storm. These are all examples of the observer effect multiplied. Change starts in the mind, is strengthened in the group, and becomes reality in the world. This doesn't mean everything is under our control. Life still surprises us, sometimes in ways that seem unfair or overwhelming. But when enough people focus together on healing, on growth, on possibility, the world bends, even if only a little. That's the power of the collective observer effect. It opens the door for new realities to emerge. And if you ever doubt your part in this, remember that every great change in history started with attention. Someone somewhere noticed what others ignored. Someone cared enough to look closer, to question, to imagine a different world. That's where everything begins, with a shift in focus, a spark of shared observation, a ripple that becomes a wave. Here's the secret. The world isn't just something that happens to us. We are co-creators, entangled not only with each other, but with the very fabric of reality. When you add your attention, your intention, your energy to the mix, you are participating in the greatest experiment there is, the ongoing creation of the world itself. So next time you gather with others, even in small ways, notice the power of your shared attention. In a conversation, a meeting, a game, or a silent moment, your focus matters. Ask yourself, what are we creating together? Just by observing, just by caring, just by being present. And then watch what unfolds. But this is only the beginning. Now that you know the power of collective observation, what practical steps can you take to use it on purpose in your life? How can you shift your daily experience from passive to active, from reactive to creative? Is it possible to harness this observer effect, not just in theory, but as a real tool for shaping your tomorrow? That's where we're headed next. Because understanding is only half the journey. The next step is action. Putting your new awareness to work and seeing just how much you can shape starting today. So here you are, holding the idea that attention is power, your own and the collective's. You've glimpsed how observation isn't just a passive act, but a force that shapes, nudges, and sometimes even rewires the world around you. You know reality is tangled together, not just for electrons or galaxies, but for everyday people with everyday dreams, worries, and hopes. The next question almost asks itself, what can you do with this? Is it possible to use the observer effect to actually change your tomorrow? Let's get something clear right away. This isn't about wishing for miracles or snapping your fingers to summon perfect luck. Life has rough edges. But what if you could shift the odds in your favor? What if the right kind of attention, intention, and focus could help you carve new paths, open unseen doors, and turn chance into opportunity? Start simple. Think of a day when you wake up, already in a rush, scrolling your phone before your feet even hit the floor. Maybe you're dreading a meeting or just running on autopilot. You barely taste your coffee. By midday, you realize you can't even remember what you did that morning. The world feels flat, colorless, out of your hands. Now rewind. Picture waking up just a little slower. You put your phone aside and notice the room, the air, the light, even the way your body feels. You pause for a breath and set a simple intention. Today, I'm going to look for one thing that surprises me. No big goals, just an experiment. As the day unfolds, you keep that question in mind. You pay a bit more attention to faces in the elevator, to the pattern of traffic, to the conversations you usually tune out. And sure enough, something catches your eye. A stranger's kindness, a song on the radio that fits your mood, a solution to a problem that pops up out of nowhere. You notice it, and in that moment, the day feels different, sharper, deeper, more alive. This isn't magic. It's your attention working for you instead of against you. When you focus on possibility, you train your mind to see it. When you expect meaning, you find more of it. It's as if the universe meets you halfway, offering more of what you notice. What you observe grows. That's the observer effect, lived in real time. It's not just about noticing, though. Intention adds another layer. When you choose where your mind will go, not just letting the world toss you from worry to worry, you become the shaper, not just the watcher. Try setting an intention before you walk into a room. I want to really listen today. Or, I'm going to look for what's working, not just what's broken. Watch how it changes your experience, and often how it changes the way others respond to you, too. There are people who live this way, quietly using the observer effect every day. Take the athlete who visualizes victory. Not just wishing, but rehearsing every move in their mind, feeling the sweat, the adrenaline, the triumph. Research shows their brains and bodies respond as if the race is happening for real. That rehearsal primes their nerves, sharpens their focus, and gives them an edge. Or the student who imagines walking into an exam with calm and confidence, rather than panic and dread. Their heart slows, their thinking clears, and suddenly, the facts come easier. Maybe you've tried something similar, making a vision board, repeating affirmations, writing goals in a journal. These aren't just self-help cliches. They're ways of guiding your attention, shaping what stands out in the endless blur of daily life. Your mind is flooded with signals, but intention is the filter. When you decide what matters, you start to notice the details that match, and those details add up to new choices, new habits, even new realities. What about the stories you tell yourself? Every day, you're narrating your own life, sometimes without realizing it. I'm always late. I never catch a break. I'm not good at talking to people. If you observe yourself through that lens, the world will offer proof again and again. But what happens if you catch the story and change it, even slightly? I'm learning to be on time. Sometimes things do go my way. I'm getting better at conversations. The shift might feel small at first, but your brain and the world start to pay attention. Your actions change, your options widen, and new outcomes become possible. The observer effect isn't just about positive thinking. It's about honest noticing, too. Sometimes what you see is tough. The habits that aren't serving you, the relationships that drain more than they give, the dreams you've left on a shelf. Facing those truths with open eyes can hurt, but it's also the only way to create change. The act of observing, really seeing what is, makes transformation possible. Without that, you're just drifting. You don't have to do this alone. Remember the power of collective observation. If you want to build a new habit, tell a friend, or find a group with the same goal. When you share intentions, focus multiplies. Suddenly, you're not just accountable to yourself, but supported by others who are watching, cheering, and noticing your progress. The same is true for families, teams, and whole communities. When a group shares an intention, kindness in a school, safety in a neighborhood, creativity in a company, the observer effect grows even stronger. New solutions, new opportunities, and new stories start to emerge. Here's a simple experiment you can try right now. Pick one thing in your life you wish were different. Don't judge or blame, just notice it. Bring your attention to how it feels, how it affects your day, what patterns repeat. Then, set a clear intention about how you'd like it to change. Write it down. Say it out loud. Share it with someone you trust. Over the next week, keep observing without forcing, without pushing, just paying attention. Notice what shifts. Do new options show up? Do you react differently? Does your mood or motivation change? Sometimes the world moves quickly, sometimes slowly. But by observing and intending, you invite change in. People often ask if there's proof that any of this works. Science is starting to catch up, showing how attention rewires the brain, how intention shapes performance, how shared focus changes group dynamics. But at the deepest level, the proof is lived, not measured. It's in the stories of people who use the observer effect and find that doors open, moods lift, and possibilities expand. Not by accident, but by design. Let's get practical. Want to boost your observer power? Start with mindfulness. Even 5 minutes of tuning into your breath, your senses, your thoughts can train your mind to notice instead of drift. From there, add intention. Ask yourself, what do I want to see more of today? Focus on gratitude, curiosity, or creativity. Watch how your experience changes, not just inside, but in what the world seems to offer back. Visualization is another tool. Imagine in detail the outcome you want. Not just the surface, but the feeling, the sights, the sounds. The more real it feels in your mind, the more your brain and body start to act as if it's possible. This doesn't guarantee success, but it builds the pathways for new habits, new actions, and new results. If you want to supercharge the effect, combine your intention with others. Find a partner, a team, or a community with a shared goal. Meet, talk, visualize together. Keep each other accountable, not through pressure, but through shared observation. Notice progress, celebrate wins, learn from setbacks. This is where the observer effect goes from personal to exponential. And remember, the world is full of noise. There are distractions everywhere. Voices telling you what to worry about, what to buy, who to be. The more you practice guiding your own attention, the less you're thrown off course by someone else's agenda. Your focus becomes your anchor, your compass, your creative spark. Of course, there will be days when nothing seems to work, when your best intentions fall flat, when reality feels stubborn, when old stories come back louder than ever. That's okay. The observer effect isn't about perfection, but persistence. Each day is a new experiment. Each moment is a new chance to observe, intend, and shape what comes next. As you practice, you'll start to notice little shifts. More energy, more opportunities, more meaning in the routine moments. You'll catch yourself reacting differently, making choices you'd once have missed. The world might not change overnight, but your relationship to it does. You move from being at the mercy of circumstance to participating in the creation of what comes next. If you look around, you'll find people everywhere who are quietly shaping their tomorrows with intention and attention. The artist who creates beauty in a world full of chaos. The teacher who sees potential in every student, not just the best behaved. The parent who listens deeply, noticing a child's mood before a word is spoken. The leader who holds a vision when others only see obstacles. These are observers at work, quietly tuning the frequency of reality. Your story can be the same. Start small. Choose one thing to notice, one intention to set, one story to rewrite. Share it, live it, watch what happens. If you slip, just begin again. The observer effect is always available, always waiting for your next act of attention. And don't forget, you're not alone. You're part of a web, a network of observers, all learning, all shaping, all co-creating this entangled world. The changes you make, the shifts you notice, ripple out further than you know. Someone might notice your courage, your kindness, your curiosity, and find themselves changed too. That's how new worlds are born. Not all at once, but through countless moments of observation and intention, added up over time. So here's your invitation. Make the observer effect a practice, not just an idea. Notice, intend, share, repeat. Use your attention on purpose and see how reality responds. It might not always be what you expect, but it will always be an adventure. And as you keep experimenting, keep asking the questions that matter. What am I shaping with my attention? What story am I living? What new tomorrow am I helping to create just by observing right here, right now? But even as you step into this new role as an active observer, there's an even bigger question ahead. What does it mean to live every day in a world where observation is never neutral, where every act of attention is an act of creation? Are you ready to claim the responsibility and the wild, thrilling possibility of living in an observed universe? That's what we'll explore next. Because once you realize you're a co-creator, there's no going back. The world looks different, the game has changed, and it's just getting started. Living in a universe where your observation shapes reality isn't just an idea, it's a whole new way to experience life. Most people go through their days believing that what happens is mostly out of their hands. Luck, timing, circumstances, maybe fate. The story that's been told for centuries is that you are a small piece in a vast machine, a spectator on the sidelines, powerless to change much except the little things in your direct reach. But what if all of that is only half the truth? What if, instead, you are actually sitting in the driver's seat, steering much more than you realize, your hands firmly on the wheel of attention, your focus a beam of light that reveals and shapes the road ahead? That's the hidden reality behind everything you've learned so far about observation, intention, and entanglement. The power isn't only in the big, headline-making moments. It's in every small act of noticing, every question you dare to ask, every story you're brave enough to change. So how does it really feel to live in an observed universe? Imagine starting your day already tuned in to this idea. The moment you open your eyes, you ask, not just what do I have to do today, but how am I seeing the world this morning? What am I choosing to notice? It's a subtle shift, but it ripples outward, touching everything you do. You brush your teeth not on autopilot, but really noticing the taste, the sound, the feeling. You look in the mirror and actually see yourself, maybe not just as you are, but as you could be. Instead of scrolling mindlessly, you pause and ask, what am I feeding my mind with right now? What am I giving my attention to? Throughout the day, this new kind of awareness works quietly in the background. In a meeting, instead of waiting for your turn to speak, you really listen, not just to words, but to energy, mood, the invisible web of connection between people. When a challenge pops up, you notice not just the problem, but the space around it. Instead of jumping straight to, this always happens to me, you ask, what else could this mean? What am I not seeing yet? Your questions change, and so do your answers. It's as if the universe is no longer a fixed, closed book, but a living story you're writing together. There's a responsibility here, and it's both empowering and humbling. If you accept that your observation is shaping what happens, then you can't just blame the outside world when things go wrong. You have to look honestly at your own part, the way you interpret events, the energy you bring, the beliefs you choose to hold on to. This isn't about guilt or self-blame. It's about stepping up and claiming your role as a co-creator. There will be moments when this feels overwhelming. You might catch yourself falling back into old patterns, reacting on autopilot, blaming others, or slipping into negativity. That's normal. Years of habits don't vanish overnight. The beauty of living in an observed universe is that every moment offers a reset. You can always come back to awareness, to presence, to the question, what am I observing right now, and how could I see it differently? The simple act of noticing that you've drifted is itself a kind of creation, a signal to the universe that you're ready for something new. Sometimes the shifts are tiny, choosing to find one thing to appreciate about a difficult day, or pausing to breathe before responding to criticism. Other times, the changes are huge, letting go of a story that has held you back for years, or daring to pursue a goal that scares you. Every act of conscious observation, no matter how small, is like planting a seed. Some will grow slowly, hidden under the surface. Others will bloom overnight, surprising you with their color and strength. This way of living isn't about pretending everything is perfect or ignoring problems. It's about meeting reality as it is, with open eyes and an open heart, and knowing that your awareness is never wasted. Even the hardest moments can become portals for transformation. When you face pain or loss with presence, you give it room to move, to change, to teach you something new. When you meet joy with awareness, you deepen your experience and share it more fully with others. Living as an active observer also means seeing the connections that run through your life. You start to notice the ways your choices ripple out, touching people you may never meet. A kind word to a stranger, a gesture of patience in traffic, an idea shared with a friend. These are all acts of observation, creating new realities in ways you might never trace. The world becomes less of a battlefield and more of a playground, a place where your energy can spark change, even in the smallest corners. It's easy to underestimate your own power in this process. The world is full of messages telling you you're too small, too ordinary, too late to make a difference. But when you live as an active observer, those old stories start to fade. You begin to trust your own perspective, to believe that your attention matters, that your presence is enough. You stop waiting for permission to create and start experimenting, trying, failing, learning, and trying again. This isn't always comfortable. There's no script for how to do it perfectly. Some days you'll feel inspired and clear. Others you'll be confused, distracted, lost in doubt. That's part of the adventure. The important thing is to keep coming back to your awareness, to keep asking the questions that matter. What am I really seeing here? What am I choosing to bring forward? What am I willing to let go? As you practice, you may notice something else. Your sense of time changes. Instead of rushing through the hours, desperate to get to the next thing, you find yourself more rooted in the present. The past has less power over you, and the future feels more like a canvas than a cage. You start to play with possibilities, experimenting with different ways of seeing and being. The world feels more alive, more open, more responsive. One of the most powerful shifts happens when you start to see other people as observers, too. Not just characters in your story, but creators in their own right. You realize that every interaction is a meeting of worlds, a place where realities touch and shape each other. Instead of trying to control or fix everyone around you, you become curious. What are they observing? What stories are they telling themselves? How can your awareness support theirs, and vice versa? This opens the door to compassion, not just as a nice idea, but as a living force. When you see someone struggling, you don't have to rescue them or take on their pain. You can simply be present, offering your observation, your care, your willingness to see them as they are. Sometimes that's all it takes to spark change. Sometimes the act of being seen, really seen, helps someone else rewrite their own story. Living in an observed universe also means you never know how far your influence will reach. A single word, a gesture, a question can ripple out for years, changing lives you'll never know about. The opposite is true, too. Someone else's presence can change you in an instant, offering a new perspective, a new possibility, a reminder of your own power. So what does it look like in practice to live this way? It's not about doing more or being busier. It's about being awake. You move through your day with a kind of quiet alertness, tuning in to the world inside and around you. You celebrate the moments when you catch yourself shaping reality on purpose, and you forgive yourself when you slip back into old habits. You trust the process, knowing that every act of attention, every moment of presence, is part of a larger dance, a co-creation with the universe itself. Over time, you may notice that things begin to shift in unexpected ways. Opportunities show up where there were once only obstacles. People appear in your life who challenge and inspire you. The ordinary feels extraordinary, and the extraordinary feels possible. Even the setbacks have a new meaning. They become lessons, stepping stones, parts of a bigger pattern you're only beginning to see. Most importantly, you begin to see yourself differently. Not as a victim of circumstance, but as an agent of change. Not as a passive observer, but as a participant, an artist, a co-creator. The world is no longer just happening to you, you're happening to the world. But with all this power comes a question, a challenge even. Now that you know your observation shapes reality, what kind of world do you want to create? What will you choose to focus on? What stories will you amplify? What possibilities will you invite in? What changes will you make? Not just for yourself, but for everyone entangled in your web of observation. You don't have to have all the answers. Living in an observed universe is a practice, not a destination. Each day is a new experiment, each moment a new chance to notice, to intend, to shape, to create. The more you play with these ideas, the more real they become, not just in theory, but in the life you live, the world you touch, the future you help to build. And if you ever doubt the power of your awareness, remember, the universe is watching, too. Every act of observation is a conversation, a dance, a creative act. You're not alone. You're part of something vast, mysterious, and endlessly possible. So, as you move forward, ask yourself, what kind of world do you want to observe into being? What reality are you willing to create, starting right now? Because the next chapter isn't written yet. It's waiting for your attention, your intention, your courage. And that's where we'll end. On the threshold of your entangled world, ready for you to choose what comes next. If you've made it this far, you're not the same person who started this journey. You've peered behind the curtain and seen that reality isn't just something that happens to you. You've learned how the simple act of paying attention isn't just a passive thing. It's a kind of participation, a spark that can start a fire. The world you inhabit isn't fixed or frozen. It's alive, ever-changing, waiting for your next move. And you're not alone. You're connected, entangled, part of a web of observers all quietly shaping the future. Maybe you feel a strange mix of excitement and responsibility. It's like standing on the edge of a new world, one that's both familiar and utterly transformed. The rules haven't changed, you're just seeing them for what they really are. The invisible hand of observation, the power of intention, the force of entanglement. These aren't magic tricks or abstract ideas. They're tools always in your pocket, always ready for use. So what does it mean to step into this new role? Starts, as always, with a choice. The world will keep offering you stories to believe in. Stories about limitation, scarcity, division, inevitability. You can accept those stories, or you can pause, take a breath, and ask, is this the only reality available to me? Or am I willing to try something different? You don't have to have it all figured out. In fact, no one does. Living as an active observer is messy, imperfect, filled with detours and surprises. You'll doubt yourself, stumble, get lost, and start again. Sometimes all in the same day. That's part of the journey. Each time you come back to awareness, each time you notice what you're noticing, you reclaim your role as a shaper of your own world. Remember those moments when the world felt small, when possibilities seemed to shrink and doors closed. Now you know that's not the end of the story. You can observe your way into a new chapter. The act of noticing is the first step, like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, you see what's really there. Maybe it's not as scary or hopeless as you thought. Maybe there's a path you missed, a friend you overlooked, a resource you forgot to use. You also know now that you're not creating alone. Your focus, your energy, your stories, all ripple out, touching people you may never meet. Someone out there is waiting for the light you have to shine, the insight only you can share. Maybe it's a word, a kindness, an idea, or just your willingness to see things differently. You're part of a living network, each node influencing the others. What you do matters, and the effect can be bigger than you'll ever know. So how do you move forward from here? You begin with small, consistent acts of observation. You wake up and ask, what do I want to notice today? You go to sleep and reflect, how did my attention shape my experience? You catch yourself falling into old stories, stories of defeat or scarcity or fear, and you pause. You remind yourself that you can observe something new, even if it's just a single detail. That's where change begins. You try experiments, big and small. You set intentions for your day, your week, your year. You write them down, say them out loud, share them with someone you trust. You start to notice how those intentions guide your actions, how they change what stands out in the chaos of life. Maybe the changes are subtle at first, a mood shift, a new opportunity, a sense of meaning where there used to be none. But over time, the world reshapes itself around your attention. You become a co-creator, not just a witness. There's no perfect script for how this unfolds. Some days you'll feel powerful, in sync, like the universe is conspiring with you. Other days it'll feel like nothing's working, like your attention bounces off reality and nothing budges. That's okay. It's all part of the process. The observer effect is not a guarantee of instant results. It's a way of living, a commitment to noticing, to intending, to participating. It helps to remind yourself that every other person you meet is also shaping their reality. You're living in a shared world of entangled observers. Every interaction is a chance to amplify what's good, to soften what's hard, to reflect possibility back to someone else. Maybe you can't change everything, but you can change something, and sometimes that's all it takes. The challenge is to keep choosing, to keep asking yourself, What reality am I willing to create today? What world do I want to live in? Maybe you start with something small, a single conversation, a task you've been avoiding, a habit you want to build. You bring your full awareness, your intention, your willingness to see it differently. You notice how that changes things, how you change in the process. As you practice, you might find that your sense of possibility grows. The problems that once felt overwhelming become puzzles to solve, not life sentences to endure. The dreams that seemed out of reach start to look like projects, waiting for your input. The people around you, family, friends, strangers, become co-creators, partners in the dance of observation. Over time, you might realize that even your biggest struggles were invitations to become more aware, to sharpen your focus, to learn something new about yourself and the world. The pain wasn't meaningless. It was a signal. The confusion wasn't a dead end. It was a question waiting for your attention. There will be times when you feel tempted to slip back into passivity, to let the world wash over you without engagement. That's human. When it happens, forgive yourself. Then return again and again to the practice of observation. Ask, what's real for me right now? What am I willing to see? What can I create, not just endure? And if you ever wonder whether any of this really matters, remember, every major change in history began with someone observing something new. Every revolution, every invention, every breakthrough started with a shift in focus. Someone saw a possibility where others saw only walls. Someone asked a different question, noticed a new pattern, imagined a better way. You're part of that same story. Your observation is a creative act, and the world is waiting for your unique vision. Now, as you stand at the edge of this new understanding, you have a choice to make. You can close this chapter, nod along, and go back to life as usual. Or you can take the first real step into your entangled world. A world shaped by attention, by intention, by the choices you make moment to moment. Start where you are. Pick one thing to notice, one intention to set, one story to question. Could be as small as the way you greet someone, as big as a dream you've buried for years. Watch how your observation changes it. Notice the ripples. Trust that your focus is enough to begin. Remember, you're not alone. Every act of observation is part of a larger pattern, a symphony of co-creation echoing across time and space. The world you see tomorrow starts with the way you choose to see today. So what will you observe into being? What story will you help write? The universe is waiting for your answer. The next reality is yours to shape. And that's the real secret of the observer effect. It isn't just about the quantum or the cosmic, the theory or the science. It's about you. Right now, eyes open, mind awake, stepping into the power that's always been yours. Your entangled world is waiting. Start observing. Start creating. Because the only limit to what comes next is the one you choose to see. Maybe right now, as the video ends, you're still feeling the echo of these ideas. Maybe you're curious, a little skeptical, or wildly inspired. That's good. Curiosity means you're awake. Skepticism means you're thinking for yourself. Inspiration means you're ready for change. All three are exactly what the observer effect is about. Not accepting what's handed to you, but meeting the world with eyes open, ready to notice, to choose, to shape. You might be wondering what happens next, now that the story is in your hands. That's the best part. The real power of observation isn't locked away in some lab or philosophy book. It's in the messy, unpredictable, beautiful flow of your daily life. Every moment you catch yourself drifting, you get to begin again. Every time you tune in, set an intention, or simply pay attention to the world around you, you're experimenting. You're participating. You're creating. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need perfect faith or a foolproof plan. You only need the willingness to try, to notice a thought, a feeling, a possibility, to hold a question in your mind and watch for the ways the world responds, to let go of needing total control and instead become a partner in the dance. Sometimes leading, sometimes following, always connected to something bigger than yourself. You'll find that some days are easier than others. That's how it goes. There will be times you forget, times you fall back into old habits, times the world feels heavy and unmoving. That's when this practice matters most. Those are the moments where the smallest act of observation, pausing to breathe, Asking a new question, seeing a tiny glimmer of hope, can make all the difference. Creation starts at the edge of comfort, in the space where you don't know what comes next. If you want to go further, don't do it alone. Find other observers, people who are curious, hopeful, hungry for meaning. Share your intentions. Tell your stories. Listen deeply. Support each other in the experiment of living wide awake. Collective observation, remember, is how reality gets rewritten, is how cultures change, how dreams take flight, how entire generations move the world forward. Your practice, multiplied, becomes a force far beyond what you could do alone. And here's the final invitation. Never stop questioning. Never stop experimenting. The observer effect isn't a rule, but a doorway. On the other side is a life lived on purpose, a life where you're both witness and creator, both student and teacher, both a single point of focus and part of a greater web. Each day you get to decide, will I see what I've always seen, or am I willing to observe something new? If you found something valuable here, don't let it fade the moment the video ends. Try it today. Choose one thing to really pay attention to. Set a small intention. Share your story in the comments or with someone you care about. Notice what changes both inside and out. Reality, after all, is waiting for you. The experiment is never over. And the next result, the next breakthrough, the next world, it starts with what you choose to observe right now. Thank you for being part of this entangled journey. Stay curious, stay awake, and remember, your attention shapes everything. This is your world. Keep creating, and I'll see you in the next one.